you got to take giving. So that was how we ended up down this road. So and you can't turn it off. Like, you got to have the giving as part of the website. So at the time I thought, don't really need this, but we got to take it. So anyway, there we go. And this is our website. If anyone cares, it works, I think, quite well. It's fairly easy. We've got a bunch of people that can put stuff on it. It works really well for us. Plus, the giving thing is actually quite useful. So there's the donate tab here.
Brad, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. If I just ask everyone else to mute, just to make sure you're muted, so we can just hear Brad.
You might be able to mute people too, Mark, if you click on them. I think you can do that.
Okay.
So we ended up with this donate page here, and some of this is generic text that they give us. This is their thing, your generosity is changing lives, which is true, of course, which takes us to this little give online area here, which I think is fairly simple. You know, you choose the amount you want to give, $1 million. I guess nobody's ever tried to give that much. Anyway, you give that and you can choose where you want to donate it to. We can customize these really easily. If you want it to be recurring, for example, and put in your name, etc., credit card information, and boom, that's it. But the other little half of that that's useful is when we have live streams, which of course became quite important during the pandemic, is that there's a big, I'm just going to pause that. There's a big give button right here that makes it really easy for people that are watching the stream through the website to give. So that turned out to be, excuse me, I think fairly useful. But once we got into the, I guess, the rabbit hole of Tithely, if you will, there turned out there was a whole lot of other stuff that they did that we hadn't anticipated. And I can show you just a little bit of that. So there's Tithely is an interesting company. I guess kind of like Google, they have their main business and then they shroud all these other businesses in that. And I think their main business is probably church giving, but they do all these other ancillary things. And one of the companies that they bought is this Elvanto company. And they make this application, which is a church management system. And we're just in the midst of rolling this out right now. And this is a pretty powerful little thing. So finally, for the first time, I guess ever, we have a parish list that's dynamic and accessible to multiple people, and updatable by any of those people potentially, with segregation of duties, as I would call it. So for example, the bookkeeper can receive a call that, Bob and Betty have moved, and go in and update their address. Well, then that is automatically available to the admin people in the office. They don't have to then send an email to somebody else saying, Bob and Betty moved, please update your list. It's just boom, done there. And it's constantly up to date and no effort required. We can email directly out of this. So let me see if I can find some people here. Oh, maybe staff would have been better. Sorry. So we've got our staff here. I'm just going to pick on Joel. He won't mind. We can put lots of information. We're not capturing birth dates and things like that, for example, but we can see that we sent an email to Joel yesterday, a weekly newsletter, and the previous week, and all these things. So it tracks all of the communications we have with people along the way, and can be expanded to such things as, a visit was done to this person on this date. If you needed that tracking for legal purposes at some point, it might not be bad to know that this event occurred on this day for history. There's ways to hide information from the general people. Like we set up a category, we haven't used it yet, but it's been set up that the clergy could leave notes for each other, so that we're in a transition now. So David could leave notes for the incoming dean about, this person, I've spoken to them about this issue, and it's only visible to them, but it's recorded here, and there's history and things. And so then the new dean would come in and see that, but nobody else can see it. And the same with finances, that Marg, I'm not sure if Marg's on the call here or not. She was going to join. Marg can see how much people have given through Tithely, for example, or just generally, we can store that information in here too. The bookkeeper can see that, but nobody else can see that. So the person sitting in the office doesn't know that Bob and Betty gave $6,000 last month. They don't see that information at all. And there is also, we've not used it yet, but somewhere in here, there's a way that envelope people, like the counters, could be given an iPad, for example, and then they could go and say, oh, envelope number 22 gave $6,000, and it pops into the system. They don't need to know who envelope number 22 is. They just see that it gave all this money, and it just goes directly in, and there's no manual processes. Now that assumes that people are willing to do these things and are open to change and whatnot. And so there's that whole side of the conversation there too. But conceptually, it's really interesting that you can do that. The other little thing, we haven't launched it terribly well yet, but the other thing that's available when you get the package that gives you this church management software is you get a church app. So we actually have a St. George's app now on the Apple App Store as well as the Android App Store. And you can, it links everything nicely, links together. So it ties together our Facebook stuff, our YouTube things, I believe Instagram and Twitter, if you're using that stuff too. Yeah, that thing. Mark's showing it. A nice big give button in the middle, and you have control over what you put on here as well. So you could have the give button small if you wanted. I just, when we did it, I said I probably thought the give button should be big. And if you go, could you click on news maybe, Mark? The news thing just kind of manages itself. It's just pulling a face, that's pulling from Facebook there and YouTube, and it just kind of aggregates everything that's been in other places, which makes it really easy to use. We haven't launched this particularly well yet, but we're going to push it shortly. Like there's the service list for May, which came from, I think, Facebook. It's also on the website, and then I think there'll be a YouTube video after that. Anyway, it's that was free with the package that we got this church management thing with, which I think we're paying $50 a month for, but has solved a whole lot of problems for us, particularly with the parish list, because the parish list was this big thing that was just, oh, the parish list, and we got to get it up to date, and it just this project that never ever seemed to end or even finish. And now we finally got there. I think we've got some, it still needs some work, but we have a parish list now that shouldn't need any work done to it. Now, if people print it out and insist on working off a printed copy, then it's out of date immediately, but we're trying to avoid that happening.
I was going to ask you that, Brad, because you mentioned about using the church management software is how you managed, contacts and groups and all that before Tidely.
Yeah, it was all done. There was actually, we discovered there was multiple copies of the parish list. This person had their own copy, and then there was this other copy kind of in the office, and they weren't the same lists. And we did a number of times during the pandemic. I mean, it's still ongoing, but anyway, during the pandemic, there was multiple phone tree things where we just checked in with people, and we discovered all sorts of things that were wrong with the lists, but trying to filter that back to any of these individuals that didn't want to update their lists was a whole other chaotic exercise. So we've got past that now. And you can give access to people to just little bits of the list. So if you wanted them to have first name and phone number, you could do that, and that's all they get, for example. So that the segregation of stuff and privacy and security, I think, is pretty good with this.
Yeah, that's important. That's important to know. I mean, instead of being this out of control closet of random stuff in drawers, you're consolidating it in one location, only one copy, and you don't end up with duplications of people.
Yeah, that exactly. And for me, because I come from an IT background where I want it updated once and never have to be touched again. When somebody moves, we've told them we've moved. We don't need to tell the bookkeeper and the office staff and the dean, the three different people that we've moved. I've told you once, it's all there. It's a cloud service here, so it's available. I don't know, it's living someplace in some data center, probably, who knows, somewhere in California, I don't know. So it doesn't live on any computer in the office. It's not living on site here. So if there was a break-in or something, and they stole the computers. They don't have any of the data that's on them. None of that data lives locally here. It's living in a secure data center someplace else. And I think for our purposes, that's far, far better security than what we had before.
That'd be really important too with any financial information.
Yeah, and I think the next steps for us is to try and get some of the financial stuff in here more. We're still doing we're using some of the financial features of this, but not all of it yet. It's a bit of a big thing to, we got the list in, and now it's kind of bolting on the other pieces to it now that we're there. And then the finances is one of them. So the bookkeeper has been tracking donations by envelope number in a spreadsheet, but we could now get to the point where it's tracked in here. And at the end of the year, you need a tax receipt and you hit print tax receipt, and it does it with no manual effort required at all. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. So I think it's been pretty positive for us. It takes the interface. I wouldn't say the interface is flawless in any way. It's once, as Mark and I were just saying, once you've done it 5 times, it makes sense. It's not that it's the most intuitive things, but once you've done it a few times, it makes sense. And the problem, I guess, is that there's Tithely, and then there's Tithely, and as they've accumulated other companies, they're trying to integrate them into their core business a bit better. And so this piece that I'm showing you, no, not that, this piece that I'm showing you here, like if you look at the URL at the top here, it's elvanto.eu. That's a company they bought, and they've not fully integrated that yet into their main Tidely offerings. I thought it would have happened by now, but so as they buy and acquire companies, they're morphing things around and moving them, but so far it's been pretty good.
Yeah, we at my parish, we're not on them yet. Anyway, we're kind of just moving things along slowly. But what I'd like to do, or what I'd like to see, is start off like, I know if you just start off and get the giving section, I think that's free, right? You can just sign up with them.
Yeah, you can
for free.
They're happy to take your money.
Yeah, right. And that is definitely something in our parish that I'd like to see happen at St. Mary Magdalene. We've got, I think we have just over 50% PAG givers at the parish. And it would be great to eventually move folks on, not only give them more options in terms of how to give. So like, say for this Saturday, we're hosting a conference, and we've got a special donate link that will go to the Anglican Foundation of Canada, because it's part of their Say Yes to Kids fundraising campaign.
Yeah,
but it's a little complicated because we're going to have to push out a link on YouTube or put it on a Facebook page somewhere. And it's just, if we had the thing where Tidely, I know you can do this, where you can open your phone and you can text a certain number and make an offering right there, right on the spot, on the moment. So
yeah, you can definitely. We haven't. I think that's an extra piece which they've got all sorts of little offerings here, and I don't think we have that piece. We certainly haven't used it yet. I think, given the demographic we've got here, that there wasn't a lot of call for that yet, but there might be.
Yeah.
And certainly, if it's something that's useful and people want to use it, then great. There hasn't been anybody ask for that. The other thing it'll do, we haven't used this yet either, but I could see it being important, is that it'll text out. So in the case of the app, it'll actually do push notifications to your phone. So if we wanted to notify everybody with the app that we have a new dean, like we did a couple of weeks ago, it'll push to your phone just like any other kind of notification that you would get on your phone would. So for people that are mobilely device inclined, that's a really interesting thing. But you can also text out of it as well, which is, and I think you get, I don't know, 253 or 250 free text messages a month. We've not been utilizing that yet, but I could see that being useful, that text these people. That requires a whole bunch of information gathering to get cell phone numbers for people, which we've not done to date. The other thing you can we've not done this yet either, is you can set up people so that they can update their own information in the parish list. So they can go in and say, yeah, I'm moving, I'll just go in and punch this in myself and do that. Again, we haven't done that. That requires turning on a bunch of other stuff, and I'm not sure if that's worth the effort, to be honest, but it's there at any rate for highly digital literate congregations that might work. But I don't think that's quite where we need to go just at the moment. They really do want to call somebody. And Tidely's an American company. I should just mention that too. They're an American company. They're slightly entertaining to talk to because they're American, like Southern Baptist seems to be their view on the world. So they're not always sure what we're talking about when we're talking to them. And like I know there was some early on discussion about they have some Bible app that you can link with, and we'd never heard of it before, and they were kind of floored that we'd never heard of this thing before. And so they don't always understand what we're talking about, but they're willing to talk to us at least. Or willing to try and work with us to come up with solutions. That's what I meant. Not that they wouldn't talk to us because we're not Baptist, but
right. And quite a few, there's actually, so the diocese uses Tidely, and there's quite a few other dioceses across the Anglican Church of Canada that are signed up with Tidely. So they've almost, it's only, I think, probably 4 or 5 that don't. So they've almost kind of swallowed up the whole Anglican Church of Canada.
From what David Seltzer said, that there's some history there with them. The company, again, Tidely acquired a Canadian company, I guess, that was, I don't remember the name of it, somewhere in Diocese of New Westminster. There was some involvement out there that did similar offerings, and then they again acquired them, and that's, I think, the history of that, which is great. And they certainly seem to be, their products work really well. There was once that I needed some help with something. I submitted a ticket and they got back to me and told me what I needed to do, and it was great.
Yeah, that's good to know, because it's nice to know that if there's a problem, you want to know if someone's going to actually respond and help you out.
Yeah, I think their support, I mean, I've been at this for 15 years almost, I guess, with IT, and I think their support's probably one of the better ones I've ever dealt with. It's easy to find and easy to get help, and they get back to you with helpful information. But even if a church is just looking for a website, I think it's a great solution just for that. It's cheap and it's really easy to use and it looks good. And there's lots of customizations possible. So even if you're just looking for a website, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anything better.
Does anyone else have any questions for Brad on his experience?
So Brad, you bought the all-in package?
Yeah, we started with the just basically web hosting thing, which I think was $9. There's a special group rate for the Anglican Church of Canada, which is, I think, 50% off their list price, which is a pretty good discount. So I think it was $9 or something like that a month, $9 American. So it used to fluctuate, or it still fluctuates. And then we decided to go to this all-in thing because there'd been various attempts at a couple of different software packages, Power Church and something else I can't remember the name of. And we decided to can those things and just upgrade to the all-in package, whatever it's called exactly, which I think is around 50 US a month.
What comes with just the website?
I think just the website and their giving thing. Their giving thing comes with everything. It's they really want you to start with giving and then add other pieces on.
St. Mark's has just the website and giving, so I can talk a little bit about what you get for your $9 a month when I do my piece.
It's fairly robust. I think it's a good offering for $9.
Okay. I do have Tidely. I did sign up the last time. But it's hard to tell just exactly what you have and what you don't have, because there's all these other things you can click on to use. And it doesn't say I don't have this and I don't have that. So that's the one of the cautions I'm wondering about is like, okay, if I've clicked this, have I incurred a charge for something else?
No, I think you have to speak to sales to actually get the charge. There's a process to get through to get charged. It's not just going to tack on, was my experience anyway. When we decided to upgrade, we actually had to talk to salespeople and go through that process.
Any other questions for Brad? Okay.
Well, I was going to ask if you know how much just the Elvanto has helped you compared to websites and yeah.
We've probably, I'm trying to remember when we did that, when we launched the, it's maybe not even been 6 months yet that we've been using Elvanto, but I think it's really cleaned up a lot of processes, like that multiple people can send. When we need to do an email blast now, like multiple people can do it. If the admin person in the office isn't around, then I can do it, or the bookkeeper could do it. Like a variety of people can do these things now, as opposed to having to physically be in the office at one computer that happens to have access to it, which was the way it was previously. And like I have lists of singers and choir people, and I can contact them at home using this without having to actually physically be in the building. And I think it's made a huge difference. And once we get over the next little hurdle of getting everybody on it, like I assume when the new dean comes, that we'll get him in there and using it directly. The interim dean's not directly in there using it. But I think the more people you get in there with their hands in, I think the more powerful it becomes. It has ways to do, I should have mentioned, we haven't used it either, but ways to do like check-ins for Sunday school people. It'll manage all those things. It would manage your readers and intercessors, and it'll do all of those magical things. We're not quite there yet. We just needed to start with the list and grow after that. But it has quite a lot of capabilities if you're willing to put the time in to do it, and if you've got willing folks that are interested in pushing some of these things.
Thanks.
I should also mention one other little thing. And this was a bit of a problem for us in that it Tidely, as most modern databases, would treat each person as an object. So there's, Donald Duck and Daisy Duck, and then their children, and each one of those is an object. It's not Donald and Daisy Duck as one entity, and that caused some confusion because when you print address labels out or something like that, it's going to print an address label for everyone. Well, and that caused a minor explosion a few weeks ago because there was more labels and they didn't know what to do with this. So you've got to get your head wrapped around that it has relationships with families. So you want to print a label per family, and it'll do that, but you have to ask it to do that. By default, it's just going to print you a label for everybody.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a change management process that we didn't do very well because we didn't expect that was going to be a problem. So forewarned.
One other question. When the tax receipts go out, like I don't know how long you've been using this, but
A couple of years.
this doesn't have a capability to send them as the donations made. It's sent per year. Is that correct? The church does it.
Is Marg on here? I don't think she is. I believe it's once per year, but I think people that are used to Canada Helps, I think Canada Helps sends one each and every time. I think it does it once at the end of the year.
That's correct, Brad. It's an annual. It blasts them all out via email. So that's the way it sends them out by email.
And I know when we started that, there was I think we'd been told by our auditors that we could only send it out by email if people had agreed. And so we added a disclaimer to the bottom of the donation button that says, by clicking here, I acknowledge that I am agreeing to accept receipts by email. So they were going to get them by email anyway.
So you can't tell it to, it's not like the yearly receipting is a default. You can't tell it, give it to me once a month or give it to me every time I make it.
I don't think so. I think that you get what you get.
I see.
Well, at St Mark's, we're actually not using the automatic, since we don't have that many people donating yet through Tithely. We do it manually. Once a quarter, I give the envelope secretary a list of all the donations that have been made through Tithely, and then she integrates that manually with all the givings from all the other sources. So we don't actually use Tithely to generate a tax receipt. We just use the current sort of paper process that we have for that the envelope secretary uses. We could in the future integrate the envelope secretary functions into Tithely, but we haven't taken that step yet.
Okay, great. There aren't any more questions for Brad. We'll go over to Alan. Alan, as I say again, is from St. Mark's Barriefield, and they have been using Tithely for a little over a year now, I think. Is that right, Alan?
Yeah, yeah.
And Alan's got a presentation to run us through. He's going to share a screen there.
Yeah, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah.
St. Mark's is obviously a much smaller church than the cathedral, but listening to Brad's experience, there's quite a lot of parallels between St. George's experience and our experience. A couple of general things about Tithely is it's specifically a suite of programs for churches. It's not sort of some general donation system for charities. It's specifically geared towards churches, and they claim sort of their mission is to use sort of modern technologies to help churches grow. So that's sort of one of their sort of marketing themes. According to their website, it's actually in use in over 37,000 churches in 50 countries. So this is a well-established system. This isn't some couple of software guys in a garage somewhere. This is quite a sophisticated operation. And it is quite interesting. Occasionally they'll do a sort of marketing presentation where they'll do a webinar to update churches with any changes to what they're offering. And it's so unusual to attend a company's webinar where they start with an opening prayer. So that I found interesting. We've been using a subset of the Tithely platform now since early 2021. So we've had an over a year's experience. Experience has been very positive. Really very few sort of complaints about the system. And I found it, I'm not an IT expert. I know my way around sort of Microsoft Office suite of programs and so on. But I found that it was a very easy platform to use. You didn't need any, in-depth software expertise or knowledge to be able to use the platform, either as an administrator and particularly as sort of just a user. I would note, though, there's a sort of some implicit assumptions with Tithely. If you really want to get all the value out of Tithely, it sort of assumes that everybody or most people in the congregation has an email address. It assumes that people are relatively comfortable working with the internet, and they may already be managing their personal banking online, so they're comfortable doing financial transactions over the internet. And ideally that they own a smartphone, as Brad said, so they can receive text messages. Well, it's probably fair to say that St. Mark's congregation doesn't tick all those boxes. I would say most of the congregation has an email address, but maybe less comfortable with the other items. I think one of the incidental benefits out of the pandemic and the need to live stream and Zoom meetings that our congregation is probably far more familiar with the internet now than they used to be. But I think what's probably even more important is the community that we live in. We're in East Kingston, And I would say the majority of the community we're trying to reach out and serve is comfortable with the internet and the smartphones and getting information this way. So I think as a church looking to grow and looking for the future, I think we have to take these sort of technology options quite seriously. That's from the Tidely sort of website. That's all of the features they currently offer, and I'll go through some of these as I work through this. So as Brad said, there's a suite of things from websites to giving to church management systems and apps and so on. Where St. Mark's is at the moment, we're on the cheap $9 a month plan. And for that, we get access to Sites, which is their website creation and management system. There are a couple of options with Sites that we also use. One is newsletters, and the other is Plan My Visit. And I'll talk a little bit about both of those. We do use the online giving, and I'll talk a little bit about their ability to do pledge campaigns as well. Also, as part of the $9 package, we get access to People. And People is really a poor man's version of the church management system that Brad was talking about. So People is for free. You don't have to pay anything extra than that. It does allow you to basically have an online parish list. It does allow you to group individuals into families and to assign individuals to parish council or mission and outreach committee or whatever. So it has some of the functions of a full church management system, but it doesn't have the full capability. And the other thing that's for free is something called Media, which gives you quite a huge access to free, royalty-free media, which I found very useful. Things that we're not currently using, there's a couple of things we are thinking about and considering. One is this messaging option, where again, used through People, we could message people either by email or text messages, individuals or groups. And the apps feature that Brad talked about, something we're considering as well. To date, we haven't considered using Events, which is Tidely's event management system. And at the moment, we didn't feel we were sort of a big enough church to really justify a move to the full church management system. The other thing Tidely offers is something called Pay, which basically is a point of sale system that really we don't feel we need at the moment. So we got introduced to Tidely very much the same as St. George's through the website ability. I joined St. Mark's, about 6 or 7 years ago, and I took over the management of the website that they had at the time. The website had already been around for quite a few years at that point. It was quite out of date. It was very difficult to update. It needed a lot of specialty expertise that I didn't have, so I had to quite often go out to the company that was hosting to help me make changes and so on. And it was getting unreliable. It would go down every now and again. So Tidely for us came right at just at the right time. It was exactly what we were looking for. And I think it probably took us a couple of weeks to move our existing, to create a new website. Incredibly user-friendly, very easy to update. Again, didn't really need any particular specialty expertise. We've got quite a lot of positive feedback from both members and non-members about how easy they find it is to work around the website. That's a screenshot of what our opening page. And on the top right corner there, as the admin, this would be sort of options that I would have as the website administrator. So if I wanted to, for example, add a new news post, I would just click on news post. It brings up a very simple form, put in a title, and then in the body, write the information about what the news was about. I can page down, I can update put some media. some graphics or some media to accompany the news post. Can add a video link or add a file link. So it really is just type in what you want, click and connect to what you want, and then hit the create news post, and immediately the website has been updated. So, you know, one can be adding news items and events really very easily. One of the options with the website function is this newsletter. It's an option you can turn on or off, and we've turned it on. And any visitors to our website receive, there's a little, on every page, there's an option for them to sign up for St. Mark's newsletters. And they can update their preferences or stop the list whenever they want to. And newsletters, again, are very, very easy to generate. We create a newsletter every Friday. We actually have two. We have one newsletter that focuses on news and upcoming events. And if the news and upcoming events are already on the website, to put them into a newsletter is just click, and you've got an instant newsletter for what's happening next week or any events next week or any important news. And we can add sort of additional sort of items to the newsletter. And then the second newsletter we send out on a Friday is details about upcoming Sunday service, what the how to access a live stream. You can download the order of service and so on from the website. And what we like about the newsletters is, you know, we can send newsletter, we can pre-schedule a newsletter. You can prepare it during the week and schedule it to go out on a Friday. So there's a sort of consistency and a common look and feel when we're communicating with parishioners. That they're not getting information via different emails and from different people. It's all predominantly coming through a common sort of format. There's another optional feature you can turn on called Plan My Visit, which actually we proved to be very valuable during the lockdowns during the pandemic. That when we were reopened again, but we wanted to keep track of who was planning to attend an upcoming Sunday service. This provided a feature for somebody online to say, I'm planning to attend the 8:30 service or the 10:30 service or whatever. So we'd know ahead of time, or we'd have a reasonable good idea ahead of time who would be showing up for worship. So that's the website feature. As Brad has talked about the giving option, that's similarly a menu item on our website. A little bit of history for St. Mark's. In recent years, we've made a real effort to transition from envelopes to PAG as much as possible. So PAG is our primary giving tool at the moment. Certainly the highest percentage of our givings come through PAG. So having transitioned everybody to PAG, we're a little reluctant to immediately now go and try and transition everybody off PAG to Tithely. So at the moment for us, Tithely is more of a secondary and alternative means of giving, but it certainly could potentially replace PAG in the future. And there are lots of advantages, I think, that Brad touched on for doing that. So it's sort of, for us, a bit of a long-term plan, but it's something that would really enable us to get advantage of a lot of the sort of reporting functions that come along with giving. So this is similar to Brad's page. This is our page, and if you click on the online, you get the form that Brad talked about, and a pull-down menu to decide where you want to place the funds. So currently, I've found people who've used it. We've had one or two past members, people who used to be regulars at St. Mark's, but then moved away. We had one parishioner that moved to Calgary, but still wanted to contribute financially to St. Mark's. So they set up a recurring donation through Tithely, through the website. We've had members and non-members use Tithely for memorial givings, and we have members who use Tithely not for their regular givings, but for designated givings if they want to donate to the mission and outreach of the church. Or last year, for example, we were collecting funds for the new accessibility ramp, so people could make designated donations through the website. And of course, the big advantage of the online giving is the donors are self-administering what they do. So if a donor wants to change a regular donation, update it, delete it, make any change to it, they can do it directly. They don't have to go through a PAG administrator of the church that then has to contact the diocese. It can all be done instantly by the donors themselves online. We talked about tax receipts. Yes, there is the ability for year-end tax receipts. Currently not using that. We're just forwarding donations to our envelope secretary who integrates them. But again, in the future, the envelope function, secretary functions could be transitioned to Tithely. We try and encourage people to donate through Tithely rather than Canada Helps. Certainly from the donations we've received, the fees are a little lower through Tithely. An example here, if somebody donated $500 through Tithely, there would be a $15.80 fee that Tithely would receive. But through Canada Helps, a one-time donation would cost you $20. I did a little bit of analysis. The donations through Tithely have ranged, the donations we've had over the last year or so, but they've typically been around, on average, I would say about $200 has been a sort of average donation we've received through Tithely as an individual donation. Pledge campaigns, and this wasn't something I think Brad didn't mention, but I don't know. At St. Mark's, we do have a pledge campaign every fall. It's part of our budget planning process, and we encourage members of the congregation to identify their anticipated givings in the year ahead. And for those that are on PAG, that's the opportunity for them to update their PAG givings and so on. Tithely does have an ability for an online pledge campaign, which is something we may consider in the future. And again, if you get to the point where Tithely is really handling all of your givings, then you can record all the pledge campaigns and record individual donations against that pledge and provide feedback to members of the congregation of where their status with respect to their pledges and so on. So there's a lot of future capability in there if a church transition essentially entirely over to Tithely. But as I said, we're not quite there yet. People, this is this free version of a church management system in a sense. It enables you to have all of your parish list contact information online. Currently, it's at St. Mark's, it's basically a Word document that's periodically updated and distributed via email. Tithely, it's online, so any designated users can access it. And again, a user can be a read-only user, that they can look at it but can't modify it, or they can be a user that has the ability to update the database. At the moment, our parish list really is only contact information. And the online version, as I think Brad indicated with the full-blown version, you could, if you wished, record birthdays and anniversaries. We're already using it to identify individuals within families and individuals within groups. And we've actually just started that. We said we'd sort of run it for a 4-month trial to get sort of a number of people familiar with it, to see if this was something they found helpful, or if they prefer to still remain with a printed out Word document. Media, I mentioned, this is the free media, and we use that quite extensively for graphics on our website and newsletters. And a couple of things that we're considering using is this messaging feature, to be able to send emails and text messages to individuals, a group of individuals. There is an additional cost for that. That would be additional $5 per month on top of the $9 per month. And then there's the apps function. I believe that was an additional $59 per month, plus initial setup costs, but I haven't really explored that, so that number may not be correct. As Mark says, it's an opportunity for your church to have its own app on a smartphone. However, again, to be of real value, there needs to be enough people with smartphones that can access it. So that was it. That was my sort of update of where we're at St. Mark's.
That's excellent, Alan. That's some great information. Got some good background to it. Does anyone have some questions about Alan's experience or how they're using it at St. Mark's?
I do. I have a question about the deposits. Do you do daily or weekly deposits? And what do you print off to give to your envelope secretary?
I believe the deposits are weekly. I think you can. That's something I think you can select, of how frequently you want the deposits to be made.
Yeah, I think ours are daily, so I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah. Again, since we're not having like hundreds of people donating at the moment, it's literally only a handful of people. You can pull up on the screen, the donations you've had over the last month or the last quarter, and then you can actually download that to an Excel file from the screen, and you can pick the columns. So you can customize the Excel piece, and literally I just do a snapshot then of the Excel page and send that to the envelope secretary. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
No, because there's several screens that are there, but I mean, I've just picked a page to print. So that's okay.
Yeah, you could, well, because I think that the screens that come up, you have an ability to change what is on the screen. You can, because there's potentially a whole list of columns. So you can say, well, do I want to know when they made the deposit or when it was deposited in the bank? Do I want to know their first name, their last name? So you can define what's on the screen of what information you want to look at. And then, as you say, you can either just do a print screen, or what I do is there's a button that you can click on, which will download the information into an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, I don't use Excel. I use Apple. So not Microsoft person here.
Okay.
I'd use numbers if I used it.
Lisa, you mentioned that you guys have the website, right? You're using the web platform.
Yes.
Do you use have you used the online giving piece much? Is that been also a part of?
It's only just begun to do
Okay.
that. People are just, I would love to transition people away from the PAG because we've had a lot of difficulty with people wanting to make changes and it not happening. So I find that the cost is better than Canada Helps
Right.
for pricing. When people are using credit cards and things like that. And so I'm trying to encourage people to use it. There have been a couple of donations through Tidely, but that's only small. We've only been in the last, not quite a month even, really,
Right.
using it because our website came up for renewal and the cost was just so incredible to do right now. I thought, oh, I'll go do this. We had a separate domain cost that I don't think Tiley has if you go just with them. But we already had our domain name, so I used that and transitioned to Tithely very quickly. So just trying to encourage people to do it, but I'm having difficulties, when there's a memorial, making sure that the envelope people know exactly what it is they need to record, etc. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So far at St. Mark's, we haven't sort of promoted people to transition from PAG to Tidely. We've used at the moment an opportunity for non-members, people that are just visiting our website, to be encouraged to donate. And if we have a special project or a special campaign, we offer Tidely as an alternative to writing a check. Instead of writing us a check, just go online and click on the button and make your donation that way. So I think we're gradually trying to get people used to Tidely. So if at some point in the future we want to transition from PAG, then hopefully it won't be such a big step.
Mm-hmm.
A good point, Alan and Lisa, there about, you're right. It takes time, doesn't it, to kind of get people used to a new way of doing things or a new technology. But, and maybe Wayne could speak to this, but I think if you look into the future ahead, making those kind of things easier to do just from, managing your own giving, just like I do with stuff outside of the church, right? If I'm donating to something, I'm going on the webpage and I'm making a donation. And the complication of the PAG and all the middlemen involved, that's not going to last forever because people will get tired when you see how fast and easy it is to use these other technologies. Like Wayne, maybe you can speak to a moment of, I know the diocese is not looking to drop PAG, but at some point, moving on to these other platforms that allow people to manage it themselves. Do you see that as the way to go?
Mark, a number of things are happening. One is the information we have is that parishes are relying less on church envelopes. We will have them, but less so. Pre-authorized giving has been the norm to try and stabilize a parish's income. But I agree, the trend and what was reported in the recent Canada Helps annual report is that more and more people are relying on things like Tithely, Canada Helps, and equivalent. And I think we need to encourage it all the more rather than less, and make the resources available. For example, Alan, I think it's superb that there's a mechanism to invite people to pledge and think ahead about their personal financial stewardship.
Great. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Alan about St. Mark's and their use of the platform? Okay, that's great. I was going to ask folks too, sometimes you see things like this and then it's the next day afterwards, you think, oh, I got a question about this or that. So can everyone just maybe put their email in the chat, or I know some of the emails already, and I'm just wondering if Alan and Brad, if it's okay if I share your emails with the folks attending today, so in case they want to send you a note and ask a question or touch base about some of these.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Alan, it's okay if I share your email with anybody who'd like to ask
Yeah.
a question?
Just put it on the chat.
Okay, that's great.
Mark, this is Joseph. Can I ask one more question?
Sure, Joseph, yes.
Are there, at the diocesan level, are there any plans or thoughts about any kind of standardization or recommendations how individual churches should handle these issues? Or is it strictly up, and will it continue to be up to individual churches?
I think, Joseph, it's mainly a local circumstance, choice and option. But certainly where we are and coming out of the last couple of years, the phrase that I've been using around financial stewardship is to encourage a full court press. So if you have parishioners accustomed to the church envelope, carry on. If you're continue with PAG, please do. But more and more make access to things like Tithely, Canada Helps, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for today? Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Alan and Brad, thanks very much for your presentations today. That was very informative. I learned quite a few things myself.
Alan, Planet.
So thank you very much for your presentations today, and thanks everyone for attending. As I say, I'll send an email to everyone with Brad and Alan's contact information if you don't have it already. That way, if you want to reach out to them with any questions, again, feel free to do so. All right. Well, thanks very much, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mark.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, presenters.
Thank you. Bye.